So today we have another book review. The book review we're doing today is A Christmas Carol by Mr. Charles Dickens.
Yep.
Ethan, how did you like the book?
It's sweet, but I don't love Dickens' style, so...
See, I like him. It's different.
For
those of you who do not know, this book was published in 1842 in England.
You can tell.
Yeah, you can tell by the prose. It was originally written for children, but with our modern American English mindset, it's a little bit hard to read at some points. Keeping up with different characters, where they're at, what's going on. Can be a little bit confusing, but once you get into the rhythm of it, you're perfectly all right.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I liked it. This is the first Charles Dickens I've ever read, Ethan.
It is also the first Charles Dickens book that I've ever read.
And I think this is one of the more approachable. I mean, it's not Tale of Two Cities.
Oh, no, yeah.
But it's A Christmas Carol, but it's a great story for this time of year.
Oh, yeah. It is Christmas time, right?
It's probably the quintessential Christmas read.
Sure, and I personally know people who say that their parents make them listen to it every Christmas or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of funny.
And this season, I haven't really been in the Christmas spirit like I usually am.
Yeah,
I think after reading this book, it did get me more into that mindset, though.
Yeah, I can't really say that for myself.
Ethan,
I'm not very Christmassy
this year. I've never
this
seen
year.
you really as a Christmas person.
I am a Christmas person. I just don't get all festive like some people do. I wear, you know what? Like today, I'm wearing my Go 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 Santa running shirt. It is Santa running, right? So I'm festive enough, but I don't.
This year does seem different, though.
I mean, yeah, I guess so.
I think growing up too has something to do with it, but
well, sure.
I've always loved Christmas. It's just this year I guess I've been so busy, I haven't really had a chance to really get into it. But I sat down with this book a few weeks ago, and I read it almost in one sitting. It's very approachable.
Yeah.
My copy was 130 pages.
Yeah, for reference, my copy was 94. And, of course, this will vary depending on print size.
I had the old Scholastic miniature edition, so the print was a little bit larger. I think, what edition's yours?
I have the A Christmas Carol and Other Christmas Books compiled by Vintage Classics. It's got A Christmas Carol, obviously, and it's got other stories by Dickens, like we have A Christmas Carol, The Chimes, The Cricket on the Hearth, The Battle of Life, and The Haunted Man. So, yeah, I haven't read any of the works in this book except for A Christmas Carol, but...
Are you planning on reading it?
I'm going to be honest, no. I didn't...
Ethan, I think that would be fun leading up to Christmas.
Oh, I'm sure it would be. But I've been doing a lot of reading lately, right? And consequently, my reading stack has gotten even. So there are a lot of works that...
Good problems to have.
Yes, it is. There are a lot of books that I really want to read this over this Christmas break because we're about to get out for break. I enjoyed it.
What a better way to spend break.
Right. I enjoyed A Christmas Carol. I'm happy I read it. I'm happy I have exposure to Dickens' works. But I'm not sure that I will continue reading Dickens.
Well, I mean, it's one of those things you hear it referenced all the time.
Well, right.
You're being a Scrooge. Well, do you know where that comes from? No. You know what it's referencing? No. Well, this is what it's referencing.
And we do know.
We knew it before, but we know. We hadn't experienced it first.
We've walked the walk now.
A lot of people have watched the movies.
Yeah.
I've never seen the movies. Have you seen the movies?
I haven't either, no. I didn't really know there was a movie until you mentioned it to me.
No, and everybody loves the movie, too. I've never seen it. I think there's a cartoon version, an animated version.
I think there's a Mickey Mouse version that people enjoy, so if that's...
And then there's an old black and white film it's more of a classic film.
Right, okay.
But yeah, in pop culture, this book is... Everybody at least knows kind of what happens from the name. Not from the name, but when they hear the name, there's certain connotations that pop up. But to get into the book, it starts out with a guy named Ebenezer Scrooge. And he is an older man, and he owns a counting house, which is basically, from what I took, it's a bank, basically. And he is in a bad mood, to put it lightly.
Yeah.
But he has been in a bad mood for
7 years.
The past few decades. Even before that,
But it intensified.
It really intensified once his partner Marley died.
Jacob Marley.
So Jacob Marley, he owned the counting house with a partner, Jacob Marley, and he passed away 7 years ago. And ever since then, he's been taking care of the business himself, and he's kind of devolved and withdrew into himself, and he's this hermit type.
Yeah. The business was called Marley and Scrooge, or Scrooge and Marley, and when Marley had died, Scrooge never marked out or replaced Marley's name on the business, on the entrance. People would enter into the building and they would say, "Oh, hey Marley," or "Hey Scrooge." It wouldn't really, they wouldn't know who they were talking to, and Scrooge got to the point where he would just answer to both.
Yeah.
It's kind of sad. Scrooge didn't really seem to do anything about it. I mean, I can't blame him. It's still the name of the business, and you can still do the same things. So, yeah.
And, you know, Scrooge never got married.
Nope.
You see more about that later in the story.
Yeah.
He had his chances.
Didn't work out.
It didn't work out because of him.
Right.
And we'll get into more of that later. But he is alone. He doesn't have any children. He does have a nephew that he is very rude to. But his nephew appears earlier in the story. The story opens up on Christmas Eve, and Scrooge is in his counting house. And for those of you who do not know, London is known for its fog. It's synonymous with the city. So a deep fog sets in. It's a cold, dark Christmas night. And there's a lot of symbolism here to Scrooge's inner dialogue and inner character. And Scrooge's nephew comes in and tries to invite him to come to his Christmas dinner at his house with his wife. And here Scrooge berates his nephew, talking about why did he get married, why did he, why does he celebrate Christmas, all this different stuff.
Scrooge thinks Christmas is the worst thing in the world. Like, why would anyone ever celebrate Christmas? Why would anyone ever buy people things, right?
Yeah, and
he's very uptight with his money too. If you haven't realized that by now, and he doesn't like spending money. He doesn't donate to charities. He's very disgruntled by taxes, right?
And
he's a penny pincher.
Absolutely, and in this scene we see that when a person who is gathering for charity comes by the counting house, and Scrooge tells him off, and at some point he almost becomes a caricature, not a real person.
Right.
Christmas bad. But you see the point. Also, in this scene is Scrooge's assistant.
Right.
And his name was Bob. Bob works all the time for Scrooge.
Right. He
has almost no days off.
Nope.
And he wants to get off a little bit early for Christmas Eve. Scrooge...
He's very upset by this.
Very upset by this. Wants him to actually come in tomorrow, but begrudgingly lets him stay
off,
home.
yeah.
But he has to come in extra early on Boxing Day, the day after Christmas, which in England is another holiday.
Interesting. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So he's coming in extra early the next day.
Yeah. A, he doesn't like Christmas, and B, now he's losing his clerk or assistant, secretary, and that just upsets him even more.
He is livid.
Yeah.
He decides at this point to go home, and it's extremely dark outside. He's having a lot of trouble getting home, feeling his way around in the dark. He finally finds his way back to his house where him and Marley used to live together.
Right.
They were very close friends.
This goes to show even more how close.
They had almost a symbiotic relationship.
Right. They relied on each other. They lived in the same house. They worked in the same business. If I didn't know better, I would think they were brothers, right? They did everything together. They were very close.
Everything. And something very interesting happens when he approaches the door. As he's going in, he sees Marley's face on the doorknob.
Yeah, and he kind of hallucinates it, really. He thinks he's hallucinating. He's
He's tired. It's
late at night.
It's dark outside.
He doesn't think a whole lot of it. It's like, oh, well. And his reaction to it makes me believe that he's seen things like that in the past, right? It wasn't a surprise to him, so that makes me question his mental well-being.
And he's questioning his mental well-being.
He is, right.
He goes inside, and it's very decrepit. And he picks his, what is it called? Is it gruel?
Yeah, it's like it's coughing medicine, kind of, because he has a cold.
Yeah, so he fixes this, he takes some of it, and he thinks he's hearing stuff in the house. So he thinks he's being silly, so he goes around to debate. Though he does go around to every single room and check under beds and in closets.
Checks doors, make sure they're locked. He makes sure everything's in the right place. He goes as far as even like making sure the poker for his fireplace is
in a very paranoid manner.
Right. He's kind of crazy, right?
Yeah, so he goes to his room. He doesn't just lock his bedroom door.
He double locks.
He closes the bolt. So he basically shuts himself in. He's sitting there. He's about to go to bed. He's lighting the fire. And he starts to hear chains rattling down in the basement. Almost like somebody was dragging a heavy chain across. He's got like a box of wine in the cellar. at this point, the dragging of chains, as it explains in this story, is synonymous with ghosts and spirits. Mm-hmm. They hold chains because of their misdeeds from the mortal world. Mm-hmm. So this really freaks him out. And it gets louder and louder and louder, and then
he appears.
Marley comes back.
Mr. Marley. He appears, and at first Scrooge is shocked. Like, wouldn't you be if a ghost appeared to you on Christmas Eve? And neither of them really know what to think. But Marley's there for a purpose, and that is to save Scrooge from his own downfall.
He has very specific chains that are just like Scrooge's chains. They are filled with, like, banknotes, like money. So he carries his chains of greed from the mortal world. He has to carry those forever. Right. That's his punishment. Right. And he's worried that's what Scrooge is going to have to do as well.
Like I said earlier, Marley was, I don't want to say sent, but he sent himself to save Scrooge from his own downfall. He wants to prevent Scrooge from holding these grudges and malicious, not malicious, but
well, in a way, malicious.
Yeah, his attitude and his current way of life to his grave. Because if Scrooge changes his ways, he won't have to live as a ghost, and he won't have to live for his sins in the mortal world.
And Marley says that he's been trying to contact him for 7 years.
Right.
But part of his punishment is that he can witness things in the mortal world, but he cannot affect them.
Yes.
So he's been following Scrooge around, but this is the first time he's been allowed to appear in a physical form.
And just for a little bit of backstory, Marley had died 7 years prior on the same day. Remember, it's Christmas Eve, right? Yeah. Marley died on Christmas Eve. That'd be very hard for his loved ones. And to be fair, he didn't have very many loved ones. Except Scrooge. So this has to just worsen Scrooge's outlook on Christmas as a whole holiday.
And that affects a lot of people in the real world, too.
Yes.
Especially on the holiday season, if somebody passes. It's very hard for that person. Because it's that constant reminder. Right. And that, you're right, I didn't really consider that. That could, and it does affect Scrooge's outlook on the season. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so Marley explains to him, listen, you don't really have, I'm going to try to show you the right path. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't really have a choice at this point.
No.
Before Marley leaves, he says, you will be visited by a spirit, 3 different spirits.
Yes.
At 1 o'clock each day for the next 3 days.
Yes.
And then he shows Scrooge outside the window, and there's hundreds of ghosts about, just showing how many people are enslaved to these vices. And most of those people, shockingly, Scrooge actually knows.
Mm-hmm. Or formerly knew.
He had dealings with them. People he never thought would have those, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those issues, and they had them.
And I think that's kind of a euphemism for everyone has their sins, right? Everyone has a darker side of them that maybe not everyone knows about, and you shouldn't judge them because they might be dealing with something, right?
Yeah.
And it's actually mentioned later in the story that by another ghost that there are 180,000 of them, right? Yeah. And that's a lot.
Yeah, so absolutely.
It's a substantial amount. It's not just 1 or 2 ghosts. There's
a lot of them.
Yeah.
And it's basically torture.
Yeah.
But Scrooge goes to bed. He tries to think, this is just some fever dream.
Yeah.
So he goes to bed, and he wakes up, and it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. He slept through a whole day, and he's shocked by this. As he's about to get out of bed, though, in appears a spirit. And Ethan, you read this too. It's very strange how the spirit is described. I couldn't really put together a good mental image in my head.
No, I couldn't either.
It's like an old, young person.
That's why I have such an issue with this book. Not an issue, but that's why I have such a hard time with this book, because it's not very, in some parts, the imagery is overwhelming, right? And in other parts, he just completely skips over details.
Yeah, but you got to realize who it's meant for, too. It's meant for children.
Children, sure. But I don't think...
we're children, and...
it doesn't speak to me, no.
No.
And I know, like I said earlier, I know people who were forced to read or listen to the story every Christmas since they were very young by their parents, and none of them like it.
I think I'll read it every Christmas.
I don't think I will.
No, but we each have our different things. But yeah, so it appears a spirit, and it explains that it's the ghost of Christmas past.
Right.
So from this, you can tell 3 spirits. You can kind of glean an idea it's going to be past, present, and future.
Right.
And that's the whole point of the book. Another interesting point that we skipped over is there's no chapters in this book.
No.
There's staves, which is a musical reference.
Right.
A Christmas Carol. The whole setup of the book is very musical in nature.
Very funny.
Yeah. So the ghost, the spirit, takes Scrooge on a journey through the past. And this was kind of, I was expecting the past and the future to be my present, but they weren't. The Ghost of Christmas Present, I thought, was the best.
Right.
But the past I was very excited to see because it gives some backstory. And we see Scrooge as a child at a boarding school getting picked up by his sister. Mm-hmm. He's very happy to go home. He's a whole different person.
Right.
We see that he was also kind of lonely as a child. We see all these other kids outside playing, and Scrooge is visibly excited by this. He's happy to go back. But then we go down this road right next to the children playing, and Scrooge is inside alone reading a book.
Eventually, it mentions sort of mentor as an employer that he had, and one day he and
Who owned a counting house too.
Right. And that could be his inspiration, who knows, but he and another coworker were working, and I guess would have been Christmas Eve, and the employer, the boss, is kind of like, hey, guys, close up, we're going to celebrate.
Yeah.
And
Scrooge loves his boss.
Yes, he looks very fondly upon this memory, and he's visibly happy in the scene doing this flashback.
Later in that scene, they have the party, and Scrooge is watching with the ghost, but he's also watching his former self. And he's having a great time. He doesn't want to leave. He doesn't want it to be over. And they stay the whole evening. And there's dancing, and this is another great scene. Like Ethan said before, they describe this scene in great detail. And it paints a vivid image of your mind of everybody dancing and all the food involved. And then it kind of switches scenes again. And this time it's more sad. Scrooge is at that same house he was when he was a boy. But there's a young woman there this time with him. And they're obviously in some sort of relationship. And she accuses Scrooge of not loving her and loving money more than her. And not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not making those sacrifices that needs to be made in a relationship. And basically Scrooge drives her away. He doesn't try to salvage it or try to save that relationship whatsoever. He says, yeah. And we can assume that would have changed it did change the trajectory of Scrooge's life.
Yeah, that'd be very hurtful to hear your partner say that, you're right, I do love something else more than you. And an inanimate object at that, money.
Yeah. And Scrooge is very upset when he witnesses this. But he pleads with the spirit to
take him back.
To take him back, not to show him anymore. And after this, he does. No, there's one more scene with the children. Well, can you explain that a little bit? I didn't really.
I wondered if it would have been his old lover, but like I said, he's very inconsistent with his tenses, right?
That was really the only scene I didn't really understand in the whole book. I was like, what are they talking?
I generally think I have a pretty good reading comprehension, right? I understand text, but this is one of those books that.
Yeah. But this book is also open up to is open to a lot of interpretation.
Right, and that's most likely purposeful.
Yeah. They go back to his house.
Yeah.
And he immediately falls asleep. He's, as they say, tuckered out. He wakes back up, and a whole nother day has passed. And this time, the Ghost of Christmas Present is featured.
Like we said, Ghost of Christmas Past, Christmas Present,
and
Christmas Future.
I was like, I got to this part. I said, I don't really care. I said, we know what Christmas Present is. This was my favorite part of the book.
I agree.
I thought Past and Future would be the most exciting. No, it's Christmas Present. Because you see
the children playing outside in their carousels and with the bells, and you see a family that's suffering. And
that's actually Scrooge's assistance family. They don't have a lot. Scrooge isn't paying them a lot, and he sees this directly, how it's affecting them, those people.
And they have a sick child.
A very sick child. And it's very sad, but they're happy together. Right. They love each other. They don't have much, but they have each other.
And to me, that's really what Christmas is about.
Absolutely.
For example, at the high school we recently had, it's about love, right? At the high school we recently had a fundraiser where we could buy what's called a candy gram, and we could send them to people.
Yeah.
And it was just a candy cane with some pipe cleaner on it. It was a reindeer, and you could attach a note to it, and you could say like Merry Christmas or have a Happy New Year or whatever, right? That was just pure love, right? It was people sending love to each other. And I think that's what Christmas is about. If I'm going to get romantic about Christmas, I think I'm romantic about people loving each other, not about, oh, there's a Christmas tree up, like, who cares, right? People should love each other.
Absolutely, and Christmas provides an outlet for that too, especially did this time of year.
Right.
I think it caters to that really well.
Yeah.
But yeah, we see that in this scene. And they're just having the kid, and Scrooge is very concerned about the kid. He says, he asks the spirit, will the kid die? Yeah. And the spirit says, well, I do see an empty chair next year. So Scrooge is upset by this. He wants to stay with the family, but then he leaves. Right,
he's got to leave.
At this point, we go out into the distance. And Scrooge has multiple nephews. We see a guy and two men in a lighthouse singing songs to each other on Christmas Eve. They're lighthouse workers, and it's very cold and dark, and there's waves crashing, but it's warm in their spirits, and they're really feeling the true meaning of Christmas. And you go out farther into the ocean, and you see Scrooge's other nephew on a naval vessel, I assume, with all of his other crew, and it's hot below deck, and it's moist and wet, and the seas are rocking. But they're all singing, and they're very jovial.
Yes.
And Scrooge realizes how much he actually has.
Right.
And these other people are in much worse situations, but they are able to enjoy themselves much more than he is.
Right. And not to be all hippie here, but I think that demonstrates the power of loving each other.
Absolutely.
People loving people, right? You've heard the adage, money doesn't make you happy, or money doesn't buy happiness. And like, sure, it can help, but I think that's really true. The man with all the money in the world wasn't happy, but the families that didn't have money but they had each other, they're very happy.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And he does. And during this part of the book, we haven't mentioned Scrooge's reaction to this. He's breaking down almost.
Yeah.
His heart has been softened utterly. So he's realizing he's hardened himself over the years. He didn't used to be that way.
No.
He willingly, out of a lot of spite, when things didn't go his way, and hardened his heart.
Pain and grieving.
Yeah. And this is like the great thawing out, so to speak. This comes to my favorite part of the book. Scrooge, as we mentioned earlier, was invited to his nephews and his new wife's Christmas party with her family and some of his nephew's friends, I think. Was his friend? I think it was his friend because his nephews, his friends, and stuff like that. And it was just a get together. And Scrooge would have been the oldest person there. Everybody was there was younger, but he was invited, and he said no.
Yeah.
Well,
Why
Scrooge,
would you ever go to a Christmas
I will never
party?
go to that party. Well, Scrooge is able to see that party, and they mention him a lot. And he's kind of the butt of the joke in some sense when they're playing the games. But then they start to talk about how they actually wished he had come and how it's really his fault he's missing out, and he gets upset by this.
Yeah.
But then they start playing all these different games in like a variation of hide and seek and Marco Polo. And there is some more like little romantic tidbits between his friend and the guy's sister, and Scrooge actually enjoys this. He admires it, and they're having really as Charles Dickens paints it, the best time ever, and he does a great job painting this scene. He really does. Scrooge doesn't want to leave, but the spirit tells him that they must go, and you really see that he really did wish he had went.
Yeah. I mean, if you've ever been hanging out, or if you've ever said no to an invitation to hang out, and then you see afterwards on social media, oh, they were having a fun time, that can be kind of disheartening, right? And I know, Luke, you don't have a lot of social media, so maybe that doesn't affect you. But if you have a prior obligation and someone invites you to hang out but you can't, and then you see what they're doing,
FOMO.
Yeah, FOMO, right? That's a perfect term to describe it, and that's really how Scrooge is feeling, right? He has FOMO, and it's entirely on his own doing. He could have accepted, and
that's normally how spite turns out.
Right.
It feels really good while you're doing it, like yes, and you're like, yeah, I'll show them. And then after it happens, everybody else had a great time.
Yeah.
And you didn't.
Right.
And what sucks about that is because you can never go back.
Nope.
You can never turn back. That's what Scrooge is learning now.
Yeah.
It's over with. You've missed your chance. You missed your chance on the love of your life, on this life you could have had. That's over. Now you're missing out on chances now.
And it's all for money.
It's all your fault.
And this is mentioned, at least briefly, that Scrooge has all this money, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's so rich. But what does he do with it? Absolutely nothing. He saves money for saving money's sake. And I think, and I'm not a financial advisor, but I don't really think that's healthy. I think, of course, it's important to save money for...
He never enjoyed it
right.
at all.
It's important to save money, especially for emergencies and whatever, but there's no point in saving money because when you die, you can't take your money with you, right? If you're going to save money and work...
Now, we're not saying don't save for retirement and invest.
Right.
But...
when you die and you have $1 billion in the bank...
Yeah, he's in his 60s and 70s. He has no children, nothing. And he has no plans to do anything with it whatsoever.
He's saving for saving's sake. And
yeah, and, you know, his house isn't even nice.
right.
His house is not really, it's almost like, it's shack-like.
Right.
And it shouldn't be that way. It used to be nice, but through...
He just didn't take care of it.
He just didn't take care of it. Now we get transported back, and it takes a little bit longer this time for the spirit to appear. But the spirit this time was very, very strange. Mm-hmm. It was like a dark... It was weird how... This is a weird...
Well, there's... For once, I agree with Dickens' vague sense of writing.
Yeah.
The future's very vague, right?
That is true. I didn't think about that. It is vague.
Mm-hmm.
He can't really... That's right, because he was like... You can't really make out his features. It's always changing.
Right.
I see that now, yes. I didn't really realize that.
I thought that was creative. I thought that was good. Nod to Dickens.
Yeah. We see Scrooge's future, and Scrooge is dead. And he doesn't realize this at first. I thought it was obvious. Mm-hmm. Scrooge doesn't realize this until he sees himself as a dead person. These people are talking about him, people he's known for years and years, and they mention he has died, in like passing conversation.
Right.
It's like, oh yeah, he died. Well, what are you doing this evening for?
Yeah.
They don't care, and he sees that, and he's kind of shocked.
He never formed any meaningful connection with anyone.
No, and then we change scenes to these people in this old rundown shop, like an antique shop kind of. And they have stolen from Scrooge his favorite shirt that they took off his body, his curtains, and some different knickknacks from around his house. And their whole philosophy is Scrooge didn't really care, and he won't care now that he's dead.
Right.
And he's infuriated when this happens. Absolutely infuriated. Some more scenes happen. We go to almost like a morgue type setting, and we see a body, and it's covered from head to toe, and Scrooge is horrified by this. He wants to get out of here. And this is one of my favorite parts of the book. We hear scratching, like mice scratching on the door trying to get in to get the body, and it really freaks him out.
Yeah.
Scene kind of changes again, and we see this young family, and I think it's 2 daughters, a wife, they're a young couple. They're probably in their mid-20s. And they had these 2 young children.
New family, just starting out.
New family, and they're a good family, but the husband's really, really stressed, and so is the wife. And they don't have enough money to make their payments. And Scrooge is not going to do anything for them. Yeah. They might lose the house. The husband comes in with good news. Scrooge is dead, and they don't have to worry about those payments anymore.
Right. They're very happy.
They're very, very happy. Scrooge is not really upset by this. He understands. And then he goes out to the docks, and he's sitting there talking to the ghost of Christmas future. And he starts to fade away. Right. And then Scrooge reappears back in his room.
And at this point, he realizes that things cannot
remain the same.
Yeah, he has to change. And I was reading an analysis about the book this morning, and I was just kind of thinking about what I wanted to say for the episode, and I saw something that was really funny, and it was that the reader who wrote the analysis didn't think that he was changing to be better. The reader thought that he was changing to save himself, not changing to help others. So he was being selfish even in change. And I thought that was kind of amusing. I don't know that I necessarily agree.
I disagree because...
I just thought it was an interesting perspective.
Because I think a lot of people do that. That doesn't mean that they are not wanting to affect other people.
Well, sure.
But they also want to help themselves, too.
Right. Well, and I I personally saw nothing in the last few pages that made me agree with that, but I did think it was a very interesting perspective to take.
Like his assistant, he sends that humongous expensive goose to their house,
Right. So,
and he anonymously, they don't know who it came from.
yeah, just to give a bit of background, he paid this boy to go and take a huge, humongous, like human-sized turkey to his assistant's house in order to feed the sick child and to feed their family.
Yeah.
And he does it all out of the goodness of his heart, really.
Yeah, and he goes to his nephew's Christmas party.
Right.
And it was as fun as he saw in the, and they were shocked that he was there.
Yeah.
And everybody was like weirded out, kind of how.
Yeah.
He cleared the young couple's debt.
Mm-hmm. He had a change of heart.
Yeah, and then Bob, his assistant, comes back to the office, and he's late.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of goes back to his former self falsely. Says, "Bob, come in here." And Bob thinks he's going to get sent down the road or get fired. And he says, "Well, you're getting a raise." And I think he doubles his salary,
Right.
or something like that.
It's substantial.
Yeah, and then he sets up a dinner at their house to figure out ways he can help them more, and the book ends.
Right.
So we see a total flip in Scrooge's character. It's almost like he had a near-death experience, which I guess he did.
Yeah. He saw how his soul would die.
Yeah, and you can see this in real life, too, when people change utterly and completely in, like, a moment. A lot of religious experiences people experience, it totally changes the person.
Conversion moments.
Almost immediately.
Yeah.
And I think this was a pseudo-religious moment for Scrooge.
Yeah. I mean, it was certainly spectral in a sense.
Absolutely. So that was the book.
Yeah.
It was short, sweet, and you can get a lot out of it.
Do you know if it's available, like on Gutenberg or?
Yeah,
it is
because it's in public domain.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
And you can find a ton of audiobooks on YouTube for free.
Yeah.
One of the guys I follow on YouTube, he does book reviews, Mike's book reviews. He's actually doing a 5 nights of Christmas leading up to Christmas. He's reading it aloud by the fire every single night, live. So, there's tons of avenues. If you like a certain person's voice over the other, if you want to read it on paper, you can get this book.
Yeah.
The access, it's out there.
I'll be sure to link it in the description.
It is out there for you to read. I think this is the perfect book for the Christmas season. For me it was, because
I was rolling my eyes.
Yes.
And I bash on the book slightly, right? I don't enjoy Dickens' style and how he writes, but I agree with the message. Love changes, and love is what matters, and you just have to love one another, right?
And the book is a palate cleanser.
Right.
I think it was a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
It's not a 700-page
Extra.
biography. It's not a 7-book fantasy series. It's a 120-page condensed book about Christmas.
And I will admit, it did lift my mood. I read Dope Sick by Miss Beth Macy recently, and it's a very sad book. It deals with some very hard topics. And turning around and reading this was uplifting. It made me feel better. Sometimes when you read something sad, it can kind of keep you down for a few days, right? And it was good for me that I turned around and read this book, and it brought me back up.
Ethan, what are you reading right now?
I'm reading, well, like I mentioned, I just finished Dope Sick. I want to read The Hunger Games. I'm actually reading the first book, and I would like to finish the series. And Luke, you actually got me the prequel this week.
For Christmas, A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes.
Yep.
The movie just came out.
It was amazing. And I would also like to read Black Hawk Down, which I got you a copy of for Christmas. And yeah, there's just a few books I would like to read this Christmas break. And yeah.
Absolutely.
What are you reading?
I'm reading some essays by Voltaire right now. Pretty interesting, different, pretty heavy. But I don't know if I'll read the whole book, but I have a collection of essays at the house.
Right.
And it's pretty interesting. So I'm just flipping through those at the moment.
It's interesting to see how my reading taste evolves over time. Because a few months ago, when I was preparing for the SAT, I was reading very analytical stuff, right? I was really thinking about reading Federalist Papers, and I'm sure Luke would recommend them to me because he's read them. I was reading things like that that would have a high likelihood of being on the SAT. But now I'm just really reading for reading's sake, right?
I don't think they're going to put the Federalist Papers on the SAT.
They used to.
They used to.
Yep.
Really?
Yeah. And it was, I really wish I would have, because when I took the August administration. There was a really in-depth and analytical, critical essay on socialism versus capitalism, and it was very hard to get through, and I'm not totally sure that I did that well on it, but there certainly works like that on the SAT, and I think it would have benefited me to read something like the Federalist Papers for it.
Well, the good thing about Christmas, Ethan, is you can read whatever you want to read.
Yep.
So
I have 3 weeks of really unlimited time. I don't have many obligations over the next few weeks, and
no, we're recording a good many podcast episodes, but
right,
which some very exciting special guests coming on.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be the episode right before the episode, correct?
Right. Yep.
Our next episode, we have a very special guest coming on.
Yeah.
A very special guest.
We're all very excited for it.
I think every single one of you will
Love it.
will love it, will know this person, and will have benefited from this person.
Yes.
So this next episode will come out on Christmas morning.
Yep.
And I'd like to go ahead and thank this guest for coming on.
Yeah.
I know he's listening. He always listens.
He knows when you're sleeping.
He knows when you're sleeping. He also knows when you're awake. And he knows when you're listening to the Ridge Podcast. So listen to the Ridge Podcast.
That's all, folks.
That's
Thank
all,
you.
folks. Thank you.